something bad happened. Good. Now we have an opportunity for this. Anytime things change, I feel bad that it's happening for all these other people. But I know as a responsible business owner, I'm going to take advantage of this change. And so what are some ways that you can change? Go back to old school. Wholesaling wasn't always a thing. It used to be just flippers. Flippers bought properties, right? And then somewhere along the way, someone figured out, hey, instead of flipping, I could sell my contract. So just go back to buying the properties. Find a hard money lender that's reasonable, right? Like those are options. The other thing too, Matt Crawford, Alex Fisher, Jordan Schutz, they figured out the installment method. They created this. They're crushing in their markets because while everyone is pulling out and reducing their ad spend, they're buying more properties on less ad spend because they have fewer competitors because they were prepared for the situation.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Evergreen Marketing Podcast by Care.com. I'm your host, Brady Winder, and this is the podcast where we help you dial in your online marketing so you can build a business of freedom and impact. But we're doing something a little bit different today. We're talking about the ever-increasing disruption in wholesaling. We're going to talk about how to pivot, what it means for the future of our industry, and who knows when the next state might flip. What's going on here? So I thought who better to join us for this conversation than the disruptor himself, real estate disruptor, now the disruptor, Mr. Steve Trang. Welcome back to the podcast, man.
Oh, thanks for having me back. I look forward to this. I think it's a really important topic for our entire industry at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We were just talking before we hit record. It's been probably 3 or 4 years since we had you on the podcast. I think the last time was we did a sales negotiation training for real estate investors, and that ended up being a really popular series. A couple really good episodes we did a few years ago. So yeah, man, it's good to have you back on. Before we dive into it, do a quick icebreaker, Steve. I'm going to put you on the spot. What's the most random skill you've picked up? Something random, maybe useless that you're proud of.
One that not a lot of people know about is Kung Fu. I'm a Kung Fu instructor, so certified instructor. Yeah.
No
way. There you go. Surprising. Yeah.
That is very surprising. I was going to expect like juggling or some sort of crafty thing, like you'd be embarrassed. That's pretty cool. How long you been doing Kung Fu for?
Let's see. So my daughter turned 6, so 7 years now. I've been doing this. I wasn't even planning on doing it. It was really, I just wanted my kids to do Kung Fu to protect themselves, you know? Yeah. But once I met the instructor, I saw how much of a badass he was. I want to learn from this guy too. Yeah. So we take into as far as I don't have a school, but if I wanted to, I would be approved through the system.
That's sick. I'll next time I'm in Phoenix, if I need some backup, we'll be hanging out so I have some protection on the street.
Sounds good. I haven't had a chance to apply it in real life, so let me know.
That's probably a good thing. Cool, man. Yeah. Well, for those people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are in addition to the Kung Fu, and what are you up to?
Yeah. So, I got my podcast Disruptors. We've been up and running for over 6 years now. Millions of downloads. So that's been one of my main gigs. The other thing is sales training. I have the great blessing to work with some of the top house buyers in the country. I have multiple teams I work with that do 20 to 30 transactions a month. So sales training is my passion. I didn't know it was ever going to be my passion because I was really bad at it. But I love helping people get better at sales so that they can make an impact in their lives. Kind of like what you were saying earlier about impact and significance and so on. I love helping people achieve their goals.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Did that come to you as because you started out as an agent, right? Before you got into any sort of wholesaling, you were a traditional agent broker. When did that kind of passion for sales come up? Was that as an agent or as you started wholesaling?
Definitely not as an agent, because as an agent, I was really bad. So I just hired pushy salespeople. It was really kind of like happenstance. It was, Pace Morby is a friend of mine. If you go back in our history, he was just a general contractor. I was just a real estate broker. And then he kind of went down this house buying path, and I was trying to buy deals from him. And I learned from him that he was going to this other group with all these other homevestor guys that I wanted to go meet with them, hang out with them. And what I found out was they were all hanging out in this sales training place. So I was like, well, I'll hang out there. And as I learned what they were learning, and so I was like, it really piqued my curiosity because I've read a whole bunch of books on sales,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't really come together until I was in that room.
Mm.
And that's as it all started coming together, I was like, man, like other people need to know this without having to pay a high ticket price, right? Because it was like $8,000 just to get into that room. So we
Yeah.
can do it for cheaper. We can give it to the masses.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Thanks for sharing. I feel like that's important to know just for the context for this conversation because it's so relevant. As all these shifts come up, people can easily get stuck in the box of like, okay, I'm this guy or I'm this business and I sell this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about like how you pivot your messaging, your business model, all that. So let's do this, man. Let's start off, catch us up to speed on the recent wholesaling regulations in South Carolina. Wholesaling is essentially illegal from what I've been reading and, hearing from people.
Yeah.
What are you seeing?
I wouldn't say illegal per se. It's just very, very restricted, right? There's just a lot of things put in place to make your life a lot harder if you're wholesaling, right? And so basically in South Carolina, I think they signed it in May of this year, but we were aware of this towards the end of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically the big thing is if you want to market a property that you don't have ownership in, you need to be licensed, right? That's the big thing. You need to be a licensed real estate agent. On the flip side of that is if you're a licensed real estate agent, you're now regulated by the real estate board. And the real estate board has decided that you can't wholesale. So that's their way of, because the ability to sell your contract is a constitutional right, right?
Yeah.
It's in the commercial code. I could buy your iPhone, right? Make a cash offer for your iPhone and then sell my right to that contract to somebody else. That's a constitutionally protected right. So their workaround is you have to be licensed. If you're licensed, now you're regulated by this other entity, and this other entity says you can't wholesale, which, surprise, surprise, right? That entity supports realtors. I mean, guess who's behind this, right? Realtors. This is like Scooby-Doo where they pull off the mask. Like, who's the bad guy? Well, it's the realtor, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the situation as it is today. So can you do it? It's happening. It's not only is it happening, there are title, I guess they're attorneys, right? It's an attorney state. So there are attorney offices that will still do it. They will still do wholesale transactions. Now, what's funny though, is that although they'll say they'll do it, and there are wholesalers still proclaiming that they're wholesaling in South Carolina. This is not like it was back in 2020. Remember where everyone was posting their HUDs and their wholesale fees and their cashier's checks, right? They're like thumbing their eyes at the authority, but not really sharing which title companies or attorneys they're using or the actual addresses to, get themselves in trouble.
And people are just laying pretty low.
Yeah, they're loud about it, but they're not specifically loud.
Yeah, that's funny. Have you, so I'm in Oregon. I'm out here in Southern Oregon. Have you followed what happened in our state this last year?
My understanding is that you guys have to be licensed as well in order to wholesale. But I think is that where they draw the line in Oregon?
So I read through it and it sounded like it didn't say license as a realtor. So maybe I misread it. It sounded like there was
I could be wrong on
a
Oregon.
new type. Well, it made it sound like there was a new type of license, like you have to be licensed to wholesale.
Oh, right. Yeah. They're creating a different regulatory board for wholesaling.
Yeah.
I think the big thing is that they made it a crime, right? So in all the other states up until Oregon, I believe it was all civil. Like you can get fined, right? It's like, well, if you get fined, it's the cost of doing business. For example, I do have a Tesla, so I can drive in the carpool legally, right? But if I didn't have, the cloud plate in Arizona, it's a $500 fine to drive in the carpool lane, right? And for me, as a business owner who values their time at a high value, getting a ticket for driving the carpool lane is just the cost of doing business, right? It's no big deal. It's a fine. And how often am I get pulled over? Not that often. So it's no big deal, right? I get a $500 fine 2-3 times a year, but I saved all this time, right? It's worth it. It's a cost of doing business. Well, the same thing in most places. Like, if you get fined, no big deal. But in Oregon, my understanding is a crime. They can arrest you. That changes the game completely.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and and it has to be fully disclosed. So licensing and full disclosure. Yeah, I didn't see that one coming, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
How do you see, or I guess, do you see it affecting wholesaling on a national scale? Are people in other states outside South Carolina, Oregon being affected? You're hearing people, fearful of like, hey, is this going to happen to my state? People concerned about it?
I have absolute conviction that this is going to happen in all the other states. I've been saying this, I want to say, for almost a year now, that wholesaling is going to change, is going to get prohibited, right? And I've been blasted for saying that, and like, that's fine, whatever. I've got no qualms with wholesaling. I've been doing it for a very long time. I love wholesaling. I have a lot of what I have is attributed to wholesaling. Most of my clients are wholesalers, right? Like, I've got no qualms whatsoever with wholesaling, but my opinion doesn't matter, right? The second biggest lobby in the country is the National Association of Realtors, right? The two biggest lobbying firms, National Association of Realtors, National Rifle Association. Like, those are the two biggest lobbies, right? We don't have a lobby in wholesaling. So money talks in Washington, right? And realtors hate us, right? For right or for wrong, whatever, they hate us. Okay. And I'm saying this also as a licensed realtor and a former real estate broker, right? They hate us. And so if that's the case, we need to be equipped. We need to be prepared, right? The people that are upset about the changes that are happening, I think they're upset about the wrong things because, you guys, Carrot, what do you guys do? You help people create websites that does marketing, right? Guess what changes all the time? Marketing.
Every day, man.
Every day. Yeah. Like, hey, the algorithm changed, right? I still remember, I did all my own SEO. I still remember 2012. I'm still traumatized, right, from 2012 when the Panda upgrade algorithm changed and the Penguin algorithm changed, right? I went from ranking on SEO to being dead in SEO. And that's when I had to learn marketing, digital marketing, right? But what happened? I can't remember what year it was, but I think it's probably somewhere between 2015 and 2018. Google stopped passing keywords, right, in SEO. Guess what you had to change? You had to learn, right? And then Google, or even like Facebook marketing, right? What was it, like 3 years ago? They got rid of the privacy.
iOS
Pixel.
14. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Pixel change.
And cookies, separate conversation, but you got cookies, you got, like overnight, just wiped out a lot of people's Facebook ads.
Yeah, right. So things are changing all the time. And so what do you do as a responsible business owner, as a true entrepreneur? You pivot and you leverage, you take advantage of this, and you survive while your competition dies. That's what you do as an entrepreneur. So everyone that's upset about these laws changing, I think they're wrong about they're angry about the wrong things, right? Look to yourself and find a solution. Energy. Yeah, right. It's changing. Great, right? Jocko Willink has this video. He says, "Good. Hey, this something bad happened. Good. Now we have an opportunity for this." So for me, anytime things change, I feel bad that it's happening for all these other people. But I know as a responsible business owner, I'm going to take advantage of this change. And so what are some ways that you can change, right? The easiest one, go back to old school. Wholesaling wasn't always a thing. It used to be just flippers. Flippers bought properties, right? And then somewhere along the way, someone figured out, hey, instead of flipping, I could sell my contract. And by the way, back when they were selling their contracts, they're selling for $500, not the kind of fees we charge today, right? So just go back to buying the properties. Find private money capital. Find a hard money lender that's reasonable, right? Like, those are options. The other thing too is the guys in South Carolina, Matt Crawford, Alex Fisher, Jordan Schutz, they figured out the installment method. They created this back, right? I want to say May of 23 to get ahead of this law. And by the way, these guys that are doing installment method, they're crushing in their markets because while everyone is pulling out and reducing their ad spend, they're buying more properties on less ad spend because they have fewer competitors, because they were prepared for the situation. And for a lot of the guys that are thinking like, hey, this is going to affect my market, one of the things, I've watched a lot of football in my life, one of the things they say, the NFL is a copycat league. Okay. Patrick Mahomes, right? Arguably the best quarterback, right? Close. He's in contention for, one of the best. If someone tomorrow figured out a game plan to stop Patrick Mahomes, don't you think the other 30 teams in NFL would start copying that system?
Oh, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Tomorrow. They would they would copy it tomorrow. And so it's the same thing. If South Carolina figured out, okay, what we're going to do is require all wholesalers to become licensed realtors and have the realtor board regulate that you can't wholesale, don't you think the other states are going to figure that out?
They just paved the way. They just made it easier. They said, here's the way.
Yeah. Right. Like, we have masterminds, right? You guys have, you guys do, I think, is it quarterly with Carrot Camp, right?
We do it biannually. Twice a year. Yeah.
Twice a year, right? Yeah, twice a year, Carrot Camp. You guys come together. You guys share best practices. Here's what we're doing, right? I'm in Collective Genius. We meet 4 times a year. Here are some best practices. Here's what we're doing. You guys think that the regulatory boards aren't meeting together at least once a year? They for sure are. They're comparing notes. What do they hate right now? Now, the good thing is a lot of them are still distracted by the NAR settlement suit, right? And how they're going to deal with compensation. It's in a giant cluster of a situation in Arizona right now because I'm in the realtor boards. I get to laugh at all these realtors freaking out, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, they're distracted a little bit right now. But if you guys don't think that they're not paying attention to what's happening in South Carolina, I don't know what to tell you, right? So I think that the writing's on the wall. How fast it goes across the whole country, who knows? But the good news is you don't have to be caught flat-footed, right? You can either buy cash, you can raise private money, you can deal with a hard money lender, or you can do the installment method that these guys are doing in South Carolina and North Carolina also, and just wipe out your competition. It's crazy. So no one should be surprised. No one should be caught flat-footed here.
Yeah. What would you say? I think if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a wholesaler who is a little bit more inexperienced, hasn't done like a true flip themselves, isn't familiar with hard money lending, private money, what would you say to them to try and get over that fear of like, oh my gosh, I've got to be wrapped up in this property, especially when the housing market is a little bit more volatile. They're like, okay, am I going to end up upside down on this flip if it takes me a year instead of 3 months?
Yeah. So there's other ways too, right? So you could go raise private money, and one of the ways you could raise private money is going to RIAs, right? Because if you go to real estate investor associations, in my experience, these are people that are older, have realized they haven't saved enough for retirement, and now want to get into the business as they have capital. So go to RIAs, find people with money. And then what I did when I first started buying houses in 2012 was I was borrowing money from friends and family and splitting the proceeds 50-50. Now, I was giving up way too much, but I didn't have to pay any interest. I was in no rush, right? It didn't matter how long it took for the property to sell. It didn't cost me any money. It didn't cost me any additional money, right? So right now, if you don't want to go with private money for paying an interest, you can work with private money and do a 70-30 split, 80-20 split, right? Like, you don't have to make payments, right? Like, there's all sorts of ways you can work through this. So if you don't want to take the property down, then you can JV with someone with money. Like right now, I'm not doing a JV model because it doesn't make sense for where I'm at in my season, my career. But like, I borrow money at 10% interest, no money down, no points, no payments. They fund the purchase price, the closing costs, as well as the rehab, right? As 10%, and I don't make any payments until I sell the back end.
Yeah.
Right.
That's attractive on both ends.
Yeah. So it works for everybody, right? But you're not going to get that when you first start as a wholesaler. So I think you start off as a wholesaler, just find someone with money and just split the proceeds 70-30, 80-20, whatever you can negotiate. Now there's no pressure on how fast or how long it takes you to sell it. And you can buy properties, you can circumvent's not the right word. You can deal with the regulations that are at hand.
Yeah, that makes sense. So talking about regulation, before I move on, are there any other exit strategies or creative ways to kind of work through these compliance things popping up?
I think the big thing is either buying it or doing an installment method. And the reason why is I talk about the installment method is because the big thing that's coming around, right? And Oregon, I think, might have led the way with this, is Oregon is the first state, I believe, to not recognize equitable interest, right? And equitable interest is, hey, I contract Brady's house and I'm going to market that contract, right? That's equitable interest. We've been able to do that forever. I am not aware, and if someone's listening and can enlighten me, I am not aware of any legal precedent that says that's okay. I'm not aware of anyone actually challenging whether you can do that or not. So in the 50 states, there's multiple interpretations of what's equitable interest, what's not. right? And
Mhm.
so, but Oregon, I believe, is the first one to say we will not tolerate equitable interest. You need to be on title. So what the
Yeah.
installment method does is that we're actually on title. We're not on the deed, but we're on title. And because we're on title, we have equitable ownership. And that equitable ownership now allows us to market a property without facing repercussions from any of the laws that have been passed in the last 24 months.
Interesting. So going back to the sports analogy, do you think other states might try and take on what Oregon's doing? We're kind of in sometimes Oregon's in its own little bubble, like, or I guess Oregon, Washington, California. Like, we get some interesting laws where people go, oh, how do they manage to pull that off or that passed?
Yeah, they drink. There's something in the Pacific Ocean. The water they drink, right? Like I don't know, if it was full of LSD or some sort of magical powers, but yeah, I do think the legislators on the West Coast do have some magical thinking.
Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. Okay, so we talked about compliance, we talked about exit strategies. What are you going to do to stay competitive?
Mhm.
Let's talk about hybrid. So you're still a licensed agent,
Mhm.
and we say hybrid as in you're agent investor,
Yeah.
offering multiple solutions. And you've been beating that drum for a long time as well. Do you still
Yeah.
think that hybrid is the future? You still agree with that?
I think hybrid is the future. I am more confident now than more than ever because I think with the regulations that are happening, you're going to show up and you say, which option do you want?
Mhm.
Right? Are you? Because the reality is, 95% of people we meet with should never take our cash offer, right?
Mhm.
Like they want
Yeah.
to sell. If you want to buy, if you want to sell your house and move closer to your grandkids in the same city, right? If you
Mhm.
want to buy a bigger home, if you want to downsize, whatever, selling to a cash buyer just doesn't make sense, right?
Mhm.
We don't buy houses from people that want to sell. We buy houses from people that need to sell,
Yeah.
and there's a distinction there, right?
Mhm.
And so if we don't have this hybrid model, and the states are requiring us to either get licensed or get creative in other ways, if we're not monetizing the other 95%, I think we're being irresponsible with our marketing. I think there's
Mm.
we should monetize that lead every which way, right? I mean, Pace Morby's done a good job with that with the sub two, right?
Mhm. Yep.
But like, there's all these different ways. So, like for us, what we suggest people is you start off with a cash offer, just buy it. We suggest installment method, wholesale, novation, creative, and the last one is referred over to a realtor. And like
Mhm.
what a lot of people in wholesaling particularly don't recognize is that bird dog fees are actually illegal, right? So like I
Hmm.
can't pay you $500 for a lead upon closing. That's illegal, right? I can pay you $500 for a lead. That's completely legal, right?
Mm.
You send
Okay.
me,
Yeah. Yeah.
hey Steve, Trevor wants to sell his house. Here, I give you $500, 100% legal, right? I'm paying for a lead that's pay per lead, 100% compliant.
Mhm.
If you say, hey Steve, Trevor wants to sell his house, and I say, great, I'll give you $500 when we close, that's brokering.
Mm.
That is a
Yep.
commission referral fee. That's illegal. Now, has anyone been prosecuted for it? Not for bird dogging, right? But there are plenty of people that have been prosecuted for collecting commissions that they should not, but they weren't licensed, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually illegal to get paid a fee upon closing.
Yep.
And
I
so,
forgot about that.
right? And so everyone should be, either you should be licensed or someone in your family should be licensed, whatever, so you can legally get paid a referral fee, 25% versus or 30% versus the $500, right?
Yeah.
So that's a whole different story. But yeah, I think the hybrid's a thing because it's irresponsible not to monetize every single lead you get.
You think so? I think you kind of just drove that home, but do you think wholesalers are just drastically undervaluing having a license? That that's what I think.
Yeah, I
I
think.
think a lot of wholesalers see like it's not worth the trouble, it's not worth the headache, and then
Mhm.
but the people that do, like yourself, the people that do get their license are like, oh yeah, I wish I'd have done this a long time ago. This is great. How would I do business without this?
I think I think it's a season, right? So I think when you start, keep it simple. When you start, just do the wholesaling thing, right?
Uh-huh.
But as you build a business where you have, lead managers, acquisition managers, dispo managers, right? If
Hmm.
you're at a point where you have a reliable P&L, I think at that point it's irresponsible not to have someone licensed. to collect the referral fee. But like, yeah, when you're starting, just wholesale. Don't do anything else. Don't buy anything. Don't do anything. Just wholesale, or I guess in this instance, right? Like raise capital so you can take ownership. But in the very beginning, don't get licensed. It's not necessary. But once you've committed to this being your career, get licensed so that you can monetize the leads.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Okay, so switching topics, do you think these regulations and these new laws that are being passed are opening up any other opportunities for investors that we haven't talked about? Whether that's
Absolutely.
different exit strategies or even outside the traditional investing?
Yeah, I mean, I know plenty of influencers that are doing the money side, right? So Corey Boatwright and Chris Iman, they did the takedown funding, right? And I know plenty of friends in my circle who are becoming the private money, hard money guy. It's like, hey, you got a deal, use our funds, and then we'll split the proceeds. So like that's the other opportunity, is being the money guy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. The funding. Who, with these regulations, who do you think is benefiting the most? Do you think it's NAR? Do you think it's
the investors that are still in the business. NAR, irrelevant. They're not benefiting from this. They think they are. They're just really protecting their butts. Honestly, we have felt on the realtor side. We're wearing the realtor hat right now. We have felt NAR has been absolutely useless for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. They don't really protect the realtor interest. The only thing they've done here is that whole, trying to get rid of wholesaling deal. But they have sold out, I believe, their consumers, their clients, the realtors, for far too long. So NAR doesn't benefit. I don't think the realtors benefit. As far as like the NAR settlement, I think the biggest beneficiary are the listing agents, because now they can collect more commissions from the homeowner and don't have to pay a buyer's agent. Right. I think the listing agents, the good quality listing agents, benefit. And I think the true business owners that can pivot benefit, but they've always benefited, So I think the biggest winners are the operators. What's sad for me, right, because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, what's sad for me, the regulation, is that we've raised the barrier to entry. By raising the barrier to entry, the biggest losers are someone that wants to get into wholesaling with no experience whatsoever. The homeowner doesn't benefit from any of this with the NAR changes. The buyer, the other big losers are in this whole grand scheme. The other big losers are first-time home buyers and veterans who need somebody to represent them, and eliminating buyer's agents. Who's representing these people? So I think those are big losers. But yeah, biggest winners, I think, are us. And that's what I keep laughing at. Like, and all of this and everything that happens, every time they make it harder, the old saying, the rich get richer. I'm putting us in that rich category.
Yeah.
We win. Everybody else loses. We win, which I'm not complaining about, but I do feel bad for everyone that's losing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I would agree with that. You said something that surprised me. You said it doesn't benefit the homeowner. I think in a lot of cases that's probably true. The one thing I would question, and I'm asking, is you have a lot of wholesalers who are not transparent with their business model and are just and won't disclose, like, oh, I could never tell them what I'm doing to the back end, and they're just, I think, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I think it comes from like lack of experience or lack of confidence in your business model, or maybe lack of confidence in a sales pitch. But for whatever rhyme or reason, I feel like maybe there's some benefit for the homeowners where it's like, okay, now they're telling me what they're going to do with this property for profit. Do you think that benefits them, or is it the ones that need to sell fast, they still just don't care?
The people that we work with, like the good operators, they are transparent, right? And so our sales process is like, hey, Brady, like, look, why would you sell your house to someone like me? It's like, I need to sell fast. Like, okay, but you would get more if you sold on the market. Like, yeah, but I don't want to do that. I want to do this. So, okay, great. Right. So like, you've sold yourself on selling your house for a cash offer. So we, in our sales process, we never lie. We never mislead, right? We omit, right? That's part of our sales process, but we never lie. And so I think if you're lying with comps, okay, well, then there's a special place for you, right? If you're lying to people. But beyond that, I don't think the homeowner loses, because the homeowner needs to sell, right? Like, they need a solution. And there are bad actors for sure, but there are bad actors in every industry. I mean, I know a lot of crappy realtors, right? And there are some really mean people when you talk about clients of homeowners. So like, there are a lot of bad people out there. So are there a handful of bad actors in the wholesaling world? Sure, but they're far and few between. The biggest operators operate from a position of ethics and integrity, and they're truly serving the homeowner. So I'm not really concerned on the transparency side.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. We've done a couple. We're probably about due for another one. We did a couple of sessions a while back on the ethics of wholesaling. We had Jamil hop on for one. Those were some of my favorite podcasts we've ever done. I really appreciate people bringing transparency to our industry and serving homeowners really well. Let's talk about, as we kind of bring it to a close. Maybe I often say that, and then it's like okay, and then another 20 minutes goes by. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've had to pivot so many times, like with SEO, yes, with marketing, with sales, with regulation. I think humans, we can fall into this trap of like, oh, I just need to overcome like this one thing and, this one regulation, and then it's going to be smooth sailing after that. Like in any area of life, I feel like that's just how we think as humans. I'm talking to like myself. It's like, oh, I just need to do this one thing and then life will be easy. But it's not like that. On a graph, it's ups and downs, It's just constant. So my question on this is, what have you, how have you kind of built a mindset to be able to pivot so consistently and just always adapt? What's kind of allowed you to do that?
I learned early on in my career that the one constant is change. And with the way that things have changed with technology, not only is the constant change, but the change is happening faster and faster. And so the change is happening faster and faster. Honestly, for someone like me who loves solving problems, I'm excited, right? Like, it feeds my desire to solve problems in variety. So for me, I'm excited about it. I think also I'm really fortunate that I'm friends with, some of the best operators in the country. So I can see around the corner before it's happening so I can prepare for it. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it has to change. If it doesn't change, it's gonna be boring, right? Like, there was I was watching this. It was like a thing on TikTok, and they showed this old episode of The Twilight Zone, right? And this old episode of The Twilight Zone, like this is black and white, and it was like this bank robber, and he dies in this one robbery, and he goes to what he perceives to be heaven, and like he wins every day, right? He's in this nice hotel. He's got to eat steak. He gets to eat whatever he wants. Sleep with all the women he wants. Every time he's at the craps table or blackjack, he wins every hand. Like everything is perfect. And like, it's cool, right? The first 3 days, the first couple of weeks, but then he gets tired of winning and he complains. Like, so there's this angel this whole time that's with him, and this angel makes sure he wins. And like, at one point he complains like, hey, look, I appreciate this, but like, this isn't for me. Like I win everything. That's not fun. I appreciate you, Mr. Angel, whatever you call the guy. And he's like, I appreciate all this. And the guy's response was like, what makes you think I'm the angel? I'm an angel. It's like, because you're doing all these things for me. Like, no, he's the devil, right? Like, because life sucks if you win at everything you do. You need the challenge. You need the variety. So for me, this feeds perfectly my desires, right? Tony Robbins talks about the 6 things you need. I can't remember all 6, right? But one of them is variety. One of them is stability, right? This feeds my variety itch all day, every day.
Yeah. That's good. I like that. I really like that twist. Like, who said I was the angel? Yeah. I would agree with that. I'm a person of faith, and even the Bible mentions throughout that kind of what you talked about in the beginning. Struggles are a good thing. Like trials are so that we can become better, so that we can become stronger, and so that we can humble ourselves or be humbled.
And for those of you that are watching, right, if you're early on in your career, just know, like, at every level, there's challenges, right? Every time I felt that I figured it out is when I get surprised, right? Yeah. So, like, there's always new challenges. Maybe you say, I finally figured this one thing out. And then, a surprise could be key employee quits. Marketing has changed. Regulations have changed, right? Sellers lost your mind. You get sued for something that happened 3 years ago. Like, it's always gonna change. Even when things feel good, you will get hit with something. And as long as you keep your head in swivel and you plan for bad things happening. Not you can't protect them from bad things happening, but you have some sort of like, I'm at a point in my business now where there's a buffer for bad things happening. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I don't have like something you hear, like these guys that own multiple businesses, like I have a business unit leader for every single one. Right. Well, I now know, yeah, I can have some key members for each one of these ventures, but when one of these guys quit, I get dragged into it. So now there's only so many things I can work on because I know if 2 or 3 people quit, I'm hosed. Right. So now I don't put myself in a position where that can happen anymore. So those are things to consider.
Nice. I like that. So remember when I said, let's wrap it up and then we'll go on for 20 minutes? I have one more question.
Yeah.
Just because your personal journey has been interesting. So you've gone from, your podcast was Real Estate Disruptors. Everyone knows you as the Real Estate Disruptors guy. But you've gone a little bit more broad with your messaging. Now you're, it's the Disruptors podcast. You're going through a rebrand. And you mentioned before we hit record, you are more focused than ever. What was the light bulb? What was the pivotal moment where you said, I don't want to be operating in 3 to 4 different things?
So there's a lot of that went into it, right? So first is like, scraping your knees for the better part of 2 decades, right? So I think there's that. But Paul Sparks has been instrumental. He and I co-founded the Whale Club, where we talk about learning the principles of like running a business that's boring so that you can chase the fun stuff, the big upside stuff. So I think there's that. Jason Medley, the founder of Collective Genius, he's been in my ear for about 4 years about focusing, right? And then I got Felipe Sands with 80/20 REI. He pushed me on creating a vivid vision, and I did that. And once I created the vivid vision, I looked at it as like, there's nowhere on buying houses on this vivid vision, right? If I want to achieve everything I want to achieve, I need to build a company that I can sell. I'm trying to build a company I can sell. Well, that's not real estate. Like real estate, you can sell the real estate, right? And can you sell a wholesaling company? Perhaps, but there are not a lot of successful case studies, right?
Yeah.
But if I build a business that's sellable, then let's do that. And I also have my best friend Pageman. We've been best friends since 7th grade. We've been accountability partners since 2011. He was the only person when I was debating quitting my job at Intel. He was the only one that pushed me. Everyone else said, you're out of your goddamn mind. Stay at your job. Right. So he sold his company for a very, very healthy sum. And he's been pushing me to figure out build something that can sell. Don't build a business that is just profitable. Like
it's just transactional. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so I was looking at that. So I have a lot of people that I look up to have been putting these deposits, these thoughts into my brain. And that's what led to here.
Yeah. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that, man. Would you go back to, you said one thing about Paul Sparks and the Whale Club about business being fun. That kind of went over my head. Would you mind restating that?
Sure. So Paul Sparks, he's someone that I've known for 2-3 years now. And so we co-founded the Whale Club, right? And the principles inside the Whale Club are 2 different principles. We want to focus on building a boring, reliable business. Right? Because you build a boring, reliable business, now you can do the fun stuff. You can make the big plays, right? And so a lot of us are trying to scale our business, right? Hey, I'm doing 2 deals a month. Great. How do I get to 5 deals a month? All right, I've got 5 deals a month figured out. How do I get to 10 deals a month? All right, great. I got 10 deals a month figured out. And how do I get to 15 deals a month? And the problem is every time you go from 3 to 5 to 8 to 12 to 15, is you have to add layers of complexity. You have to add either more people, right? Or more systems or more processes. And that's great. The problem with all that is that things break, right? Like maybe your CRM is out for a couple of days. Maybe this marketing channel doesn't work anymore. Maybe a couple of key people in your organization quit. When all these things happen, all these layers of complexity drive you crazy, right? And, your business that's doing 5 deals a month consistently, you go to 10 deals a month consistently, it's not twice as profitable. It's like maybe like 60% more profitable, maybe, right? And you go to 5 to 15, you've added so much more work and complexity, but you maybe at this point you're doubling your profits, maybe, right? But it's so much more work versus how can we be the best, absolute best at doing 5 deals a month where we're doing it, it's boring, it's in our sleep, it's super profitable, right? And as we get really good at it, we have more free space, more brain space, more time to now like actually look at, maybe I want to do a multifamily deal. Maybe I want to do this other business where I want to buy businesses. Maybe I can feed this other itch, these other things I wanted to explore, right? Like most wholesalers today, if you brought them a deal that was maybe 100 acres that we could do an entitlement deal on, that you can make 3 million over the course of a year and a half, if we do this deal, right? Most wholesalers don't have the bandwidth to even look at the deal, understand the deal, underwrite the deal, talk to a mentor about it. They don't, because they're working their business, which is what we all do, right? And I'm not suggesting you have to do land or multifamily or other businesses. I'm just saying that in the process of scaling, we're missing out on amazing opportunities, right? What do they say? Opportunities knocking all the time. Will you answer? Will you know to answer? Well, you can't if you're drowning in your business.
Yeah, that's good advice, man. So to oversimplify, it's like just pause. Like, don't assume that you should scale or you need to scale because everyone around you is trying to hustle and grow and scale as fast as they can. Like, just pause. Think about what gives me energy. What do I love doing? And what can I add on, to this boring, predictable business,
Exactly.
What else
Boring,
can I grow?
predictable, reliable, right? Like Trevor talks about all the time with the energy audit, And since I've done that, the opportunities that have come across available to me, are amazing. And I'm also saying no to other opportunities that I would have killed for before, right?
Yeah.
Because now I actually have the brain space, the time and energy freedom to actually look at other opportunities with clear and sound mind, right? And the other thing too was like, when I'm running 100 miles an hour, if something comes up like, hey, we need you to like do this quickly, two things. A, if you need an answer by the end of today, the answer is no, because I've learned that when I say yes, I get into trouble for that. But B, like these opportunities that come along, if they're great opportunities, they don't last long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so you can't even like underwrite it. You don't have the time to underwrite it. And if you do underwrite it, you're going to do a piss poor job of it. And so that's the reason why we're preaching, like, build a business that is, Jason Medley has he says it's CPR, right? Consistent, predictable, reliable. If you build a business consistent, predictable, reliable, now you can breathe, right? And now you can look at the other opportunities if you so choose. Or, right, like if you look at a lot of us when we started, when we're doing 1 to 3 deals a month, before we scaled, that's probably more money than we wanted, right? Because most people, when they quit, when they first start, is I want to make 6 figures a year take home, right? That's most of what we say. And then we're doing that. And then we add the complexity and make things harder to make more money. And at the end of the day, we make more money, sure. But what if we just did 3 to 5 deals a month and, made $500,000 a year and then got to do all the things that we wanted, which is spend time with our kids, travel with our family, right? Like, I don't know if you guys have had Haim Maman on this show. He's one of my favorite people. He is the only one. He's the only one that I know who got business for more time freedom, financial freedom, and then achieved it and was happy, right?
Yeah.
Like he just does everything with his family, right? He doesn't get distracted. He doesn't play the comparison game. He just spends time with his family. Like, I had him on the podcast. One of my favorite lines he said was like, some of the teachers or some of the parents, they think he's a drug dealer because he is there dropping his kids off every morning, picking them up every day in a very nice car. He's at every parent teacher conference. He's at all these things, right? Because he's making more than enough money. And he doesn't have this thing where I need to crush everybody. I need to do the most deals. He's just like, I'm making a lot of money and I get to live the life I want. He goes to every World Cup, right? He goes to all the playoff games that he wants with his kids, living a remarkable life.
That's so awesome, man. I think that's vastly underrated. And I hope that everyone listening, I hope that sunk in. If it didn't, hit pause, rewind, listen to that again, because Steve, you're right, man. Like the number of people I've met that you just described, I can count on one hand, and I've met them at carrot camps. Usually it goes like, man, I've been hustling, I've been grinding, I got to the amount I wanted to make, and I kept going. But they might not even be able to voice that. They don't even realize they moved the goalpost 5 times. And then we're in this industry, and it's not unique to our industry or investing. There's a lot of other industries like this, but where you just get so caught up in the hustle and the grind. And Anyone else you talk to in the industry is like, well, if you want something, you just got to work a little more. Or if you want the freedom, if you want the thing, just work a little more, make a little more money. Like, what's your excuse? Just work harder. And you're almost looked down on if you're working less than 80 hours a week.
Right.
But it's like, no, it just heed that. Like, buy back your time and be okay with something a little bit more scaled down. And remember what you got into it for: the time with your kids, the time with your wife, those vacations. Nobody's going to get, 100% time freedom. It doesn't exist. We're humans, we're a slave to the grind to some extent. Like, nobody gets out free, but yeah, that's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Where can people find you if they want to work with you, learn sales negotiation from the master himself?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways. So we have script. So we have the perfect seller appointment script. We have the call listening tools. I have 3 pages of everything I'm listening for as a business owner, as a sales trainer. Like, here, hey, you did this wrong, you did this right, whatever. 3 pages of that, right? Everything we're listening for in a call. We got our book, Active Listening 2.0. I got a 2-hour recording. I did a live event, KPI trackers, and this and that. Top 5 objections and how to handle them. We have all that. If anyone wants it, there's no charge. You got to text script to the number 33777, script 33777. And you also get to have someone on my team actually talk to you about your sales process and see what, areas that you might want to consider improving. So nice. We have all that. That's the best way to get a hold of us. If you want to watch our content, we have Disruptors on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. So you can find us there, or on Instagram at steve.trang. I post a lot of sales content there, also some offensive stuff there as well. So, if you guys want to see that, on Instagram at steve.trang.
It's good. You're on a good podcast, man.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for that. I appreciate it. I appreciate our conversation. Everybody, hopefully you got the takeaways you're looking for out of this. Learn how to pivot, learn how to be creative. Don't get frustrated over things you can't control. Do an energy audit, like Steve mentioned, carrot.com/energy. It's really simple. Just do an audit, an intake of what gives you energy versus what drains you. Be intentional with your business and your life. Create a vision. It's really simple stuff. It's not easy, but it is simple. Just get clear on that vision. Helps drive everything else. But thanks everybody for listening. Thank you again, Steve, and we will catch you all next time.